Hello and welcome to this month's Team Brief podcast. Today I'm in the Discharge Lounge at Preston because we want to remind you why it is so important that you use this service. In May, NHS Improvement identified us as a site for improvement because of our large numbers of delayed transfers of care. A 3-day event was held, including all of our partnership organisations, resulting in a number of work streams tasked with making improvements to reduce the number of patients delayed in beds in our hospitals. We recently reviewed the first 90 days of this programme and we were delighted to see a reduction in delayed transfers of care. However, it was identified that we're just not using the Discharge Lounge properly. So today I'm here with Service Manager Alison Cookson, who's going to tell us a little bit more about this project. So Alison, why is this piece of work being done?
Basically, it's to increase patient flow within the hospital because the demand is as it is, and to give patients a better experience.
Excellent. So what do you want our staff to be doing?
Use the discharge lounge. I mean, they have increased the use of it at the moment, but we've enhanced the facilities. We know it needs beds. Well, that'll be phase 2 of the thing.
Excellent.
At the end of the day, what we've done at the moment is we're enhancing it. We've got recliners. We've got a better skill mix of staff that can look after all the patients, and these staff have worked in neurosurgery, trauma, medicine, so they've got the skills to look after their patients. We do a service where we will chase the meds, we will chase the referrals, basically we look after the patient full stop. What we've got to look at, and we've got to get the wards to think about, is the whole picture. We've got to think about A&E. We've got patients coming in there, sitting there all day. Think about if it was your relative, and they're sitting there and they're waiting, and they just want to lie down. They want to get onto the wards. We've got theatres that are operating, and they're operating all day, and then they're having to recover their own patients because there's no flow to the wards. So then it's someone has to go to the admissions lounge to tell the next patient, I'm sorry, we can't do your operation today, and they've starved all day. We're thinking about recovery. It gets blocked, there's too many patients in there because there's no flow to the wards. So again, it's getting the wards to think about, we've got to send our patients down. Now I know the wards we want to take care of our patient, they do a marvellous job, but we've got to say goodbye there, send the patients down to the discharge lounge. Like I say, it's great for next of kin, just pulling up, no parking, they can come and get the patients, they get the refreshments that they need, they get the medications if they need to as well. And it'll help at the end of the day to increase flow from theatres to recovery to the wards, and the right patients can be in the right areas and we can give everyone a good experience.
So what do our patients think about it? Have you asked them?
We've had feedback and it's been excellent. In fact, a lot of them, especially the relatives, are saying that it's great, I can just pull up and I can just get whoever and then we can go. There's no trying to find a space to park. We've had transport say, well, it saves us trips and up through the hospital, it saves us a bit of time. The patients themselves, it's a relaxed atmosphere. They've got the TV, they've got food, they've got drink, they've got everything they need. And it's just that next step towards getting home and getting with the loved ones again.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So listen, you've heard from Alison about the benefits of our patients coming to the Discharge Lounge. There's a team of people down here that can support your patients and release the time for you to care for the sick patients who are still in our beds. So please, come on, send your patients down here, use the team, use their skills, and it'll give all of our patients a great experience. So next I have an update regarding the emergency department at Chorley. As most of you will know by now, it has recently been announced that unfortunately we still don't have the sufficient number of middle grade doctors that we need to safely reopen the department. We have been working extremely hard to recruit middle grade doctors. We have received and reviewed hundreds of CVs and interviewed many doctors. We've made a number of job offers and we're still awaiting the outcome of those. So we still don't have the right numbers of doctors that we need. Last week, the System Resilience Group, which is made up of ourselves, the CCG, local authorities and the ambulance service, as well as Lancashire Care Foundation Trust, reviewed and carefully considered a detailed risk assessment of the potential options for the ongoing delivery of the service at Chorley. The group has concluded that we will not be in a position to revise the temporary arrangements until at least 2017, as there doesn't appear to be any other realistic option to maintain delivery of safe and sustainable care for our patients. We believe there is not a realistic prospect of recruiting the number of middle grades to fully reopen a 24/7 emergency department at the current time. So not knowing if and when the service is likely to change again has created a huge amount of uncertainty, which has been very unsettling for staff. So confirming that arrangements won't be changed until April next year provides some stability for staff to manage and plan their working lives. However, please be assured that we are going to continue all of our efforts to recruit the staff we need, and we remain fully committed to reinstating the emergency department as soon as we have sufficient doctors to provide a safe and sustainable service. Should we get the doctors that we need and appoint them before April, we will reconsider the position at that point. The SRG will continue to review progress on a weekly basis to make sure that we can provide assurance that the current arrangements are safe and to ensure that work is continuing to recruit the necessary staff. I have formally requested that NHS Improvement commissions an independent review of the risk assessment that resulted in the agreement that maintaining the current urgent care arrangement is the safest viable option for patients at this time. This review will provide additional assurance to all stakeholders and, most importantly, to our patients that all potential options for maintaining safe care have been carefully considered and that everything possible is being done to reinstate the emergency department. I would like to thank all of you who have been working so flexibly and with such dedication to support the Urgent Care Centre at Chorley, which has been providing a fantastic service for local patients. The change has inevitably increased pressure on the Preston Emergency Department, and staff there too have been working extremely hard to manage the extra demand. Other colleagues in many services across the hospitals have made changes to how you work to facilitate these changes and maintain safe care, and I thank all of you for your continued support in these very challenging circumstances. I also have an update about the Urgent Care Centre bid. Some of you may know that the Urgent Care Service for Chorley and Preston has been out to tender, which means that suppliers were invited to submit a bid to supply the service. The Clinical Commissioning Group, who is responsible for commissioning this service, decides which bidder will be awarded the contract. Whilst an official announcement has not yet been made, we believe that the decision has been made by the CCG and the decision is expected to be announced soon. We submitted a joint bid with Lancashire Care Foundation Trust and the out-of-hours GP providers at Preston and Chorley to provide this service. And several staff have contacted me personally recently about the potential impact of the decision for the integrated urgent care service, which has yet to be publicly confirmed, and for legal reasons we can't make an announcement at this stage. We've worked closely with your union representatives to make sure that whatever the outcome, no jobs are at risk. Nobody in any service will lose their job as a result of this. As always, if there's any change in service, we will work closely with the staff involved and union colleagues to assess any changes to working practice that might be required. We absolutely value each and every one of you, and you can rest assured that together, the managers and staff side in our unions, we will do the right thing by you. I appreciate that any potential change can be unsettling, so if you've got any concerns about what this might mean for you, contact your line manager or your union representative. And if you prefer, contact me anonymously through the Valuing Your Voice email address, and I will do my utmost to provide answers. I will provide a further update about this as soon as I can. Just a reminder that the CQC has announced that they will be carrying out a full inspection from the 27th of September until the 30th. CQC is the equivalent of Ofsted for healthcare. There are regulators and it's a legal requirement for them to inspect hospitals. There will be around 40 people on the site during the 3-day inspection, and they will have access to all areas. We're currently in the process of preparing for the inspection, and further information will be provided on the intranet and through your line managers. New guidelines have been introduced by NICE regarding end-of-life care, and today I've got Dr. Valerie O'Donnell, who's a consultant in palliative medicine, to talk to us about this new programme. So Val, what's it all about?
Thanks, Karen. Well, we've had a guideline on the intranet for some time now, but in in response to feedback from the from staff in the Trust and also from NICE, we've updated this guideline. It more clearly reflects the 5 priorities for care and provides more detailed information on certain areas, such as communication and shared decision making. It remains in the same place on the intranet under guidelines and protocols, but in addition we've provided some prescribing guidelines and also some other resources and hyperlinks. To support the use of the guideline, we've also developed some new documents for staff to use. So there's a medical assessment document for the medics to complete at the time that it's recognised that a patient may be in the last days of life. There's also a nursing care plan document for the nurses to be able to support and provide care to the patient and family. These are being disseminated across the Trust by our education facilitator, Linda Dewhurst, and we're providing education and training. If anyone wants more information or more education and training, please contact the palliative care team and we'll be happy to help.
So why is it so important that we adopt this new guideline now?
Well, we had feedback from a national audit that suggested that in many areas of care we were performing well, but as always we could do better. End-of-life care is a priority for everybody, it affects all of us, and we want, as a trust and an organisation, to provide excellent care for our patients.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Val. Okay, now let's have a look at our performance figures. We remain in a very good position against our year-to-date objective for cases of C. diff, which is excellent. Last month we achieved our harm-free care target, which again is a fantastic achievement, and we also had really great results in our friends and family test for inpatients and day cases. Unfortunately, we missed our 4-hour target for ED, which is disappointing, but you know, it's just reflective of how busy our hospitals are. And we recently saw our second highest attendance levels ever at our emergency department. A full analysis of our performance figures is available on the Word version of Team Brief. Now, just a few other updates for you before we finish. I wanted to remind you to make sure you know who your staff governor is, because they are responsible for representing you. They can advise you on a whole range of issues. They share concerns raised by you with myself and with the board of directors. At the moment, our governors are working on a project to improve the artwork in our hospital walls, and Staff Governor Helen Bradley is part of that project. So if you want to share any ideas with her, you can contact her using the details below. September is Active Travel Month, so we're all being encouraged to be a bit more active. A whole range of events are going to be put on throughout September to get you moving, so keep an eye on the Health and Wellbeing intranet page and on the notice boards for all the latest information. And finally, a reminder that the Lancashire Lair is open for entries. The Lancashire Lair is a Dragon's Den style ideas pitch, but much less scary. The aim is to give all staff the opportunity to put forward any ideas. We launched it last year and we had some fantastic suggestions, and I think we implemented every single one of them. So if you have a great idea that you think will make a difference to the way that we do things, get in touch. You've got until the 16th of September to apply, and information about how to enter can be found on the intranet. And that's it for this month. Thank you for watching, and please join me again next time.